monsters that made cars go faster and faster in the early 1900s, where the need for speed grew stronger and stronger. And that very car in front of you there is I'm getting there, the Delage Hispano Suiza, 1926. As I said, they put these aeroplane engines from the First World War in. That's got a 27-litre engine from a single-seater fighter plane, a D-27 Dewalti. And that was the way they went quicker. It's a Hispano Suiza is the Aero engine, a Delage chassis. This was actually constructed out of period parts in 1980, all genuine parts. This is the way these wonderful people create and rebuild the cars from the past. We then move on to a car which some of you may well be familiar with. If you've been a Downton Abbey watcher, then this Vauxhall coming up is the one that appeared. So next up, a Vauxhall Viper Aero. As I said, this is the car that appeared in many of the racing scenes of Downton Abbey. So you may well remember it. It's got a little Vauxhall chassis, and that Vauxhall chassis originally had just a little 4.5 litre engine with 40 horsepower. And then some idiot, crazy bloke, shoehorned in a 12 litre Hispano Suiza V8 Aero engine to give it 300 horsepower. One of the oldest names that still exist today, perhaps. So many of these cars have names you've never heard of, Dions and Fafners and strange vehicles. But that's the Downton Abbey Vauxhall. But next up we move to Germany and a Fafnir Hall Scott Aero Special. The Fafnir company was in Aachen in Germany, and they raced in those very famous, the German colours were much more a white colour in the early Aero engine days. That's been now fitted with a 1917 10-litre Hall Scott Aero engine, which was originally an American Standard 11 biplane. This actual Fafnir chassis was found in New Zealand and brought back here. That's what I love, restoring cars. They find these old chassis and bring them back to life for us to enjoy going up our Lime Avenue. This is one of the factory team cars. Perhaps this is where the phrase faffing about came from. I just asked my expert whether that's true or not. She's got absolutely no idea, but says she thinks so. So a Fafnir and a German car faffing about up and down the Lime Avenue. Beautifully restored, that lovely streamlined bodywork, painted with such precision. It could have been at Germany 1905 or 6. Next up we have a Dion Curtis rocket. The V8 Curtis Aero engine in a Dion chassis. If you look at the engine bay, you can see the rocker arms flicking backwards and forwards, opening and closing the valves as the rocker arms were out in the air. You can still do 100 miles an hour of that if you really are brave enough. And this vehicle actually competes in vintage sports car clubs, sprints and hill climbs. Only rear wheel brakes, 3-speed gearbox. also claiming 100 miles an hour. Actually, these sort of cars roared around the banking of Brooklands and got the Needell family interested. My dad was a young boy spectating at Brooklands in the early 1920s and was inspired by these machines hurtling around the bank track. And the last of our Aero engine monsters is the biggest monster of them all. This chassis is a Fiat chassis that was actually made by Fiat in 1905 to go to America and try and beat the world land speed record. But Germany, like them, it actually had 2 engines in it, as did the Mercedes entry, so the Americans quickly banned 2 engines to make sure they couldn't come over and take the land speed records. So Fiat just put this in the back of a shed until not that long ago, about 15 years ago, Mike Varney, who now drives it, found it disused alongside a 16.5-litre Isotta Francini 6-cylinder engine, which he managed to shoehorn in the front. Only 6 cylinders, so each cylinder is 2 3/4 litres, like 3 litres for each cylinder, pumping up and down. Weighs 2.2 tonnes. He actually races this car at Goodwood in vintage events, goes up Shelsley Hill Climb, and it's got so much, you can spin up the rear wheels, it's got that much, about 3,000 pounds-foot of torque. So just 6 cylinders for 16.5 litres on this land speed record chassis. Interesting thing here, of course, if you suddenly got a bit scared and didn't like what was happening up front, you could just bail out the back. Got easy escape route. A Fiat like no other Fiat.